published a report a few days ago about my findings in the Epstein files. We were able to expose a man named Daniel Seiad, a Kabyle, Swedish, French, probably Israeli citizen, and we were able to find deep ties between him and the intelligence services, probably of Israel, as well as his work with Canadian surveillance companies. Daniel Seiad is currently being investigated. There has been multiple women who came up with allegations that Daniel Seiad had sexually assaulted them. If you haven't seen our report about Daniel Seiad, please do so, because there's a lot of information coming out, and we're the first media outlet to connect him to Israel, the elephant in the room, right? So why was Daniel Seiad networking with heads of states or royalty in Thailand and Qatar, and working at the Mexican embassy in Stockholm? So you could look at our entire report that we did on Daniel Seiad. But while investigating Daniel Seiad, we found some other important documents that I think is important to talk about. This one over here, this is a message from someone who's blanked out. We don't know who it comes from. It says, Bolton only doing what Sheldon Adelson tells him to do. I got John the job, but he will not cross Sheldon. Sheldon Adelson, who is now passed away, was a big funder of Trump's re-election. His widow, Miriam Adelson, I believe was the largest donor to Trump's re-election campaign. And John Bolton was, I believe, more of a neocon, more of a war hawk than Trump. But what we're noticing now is that Trump is pretty much mimicking all of John Bolton's policies. John Bolton was heavily in favor of war with Iran. We're seeing Trump today basically bringing, I think, 2 Navy carriers to the Persian Gulf, preparing what looks like to be for war against Iran. And it basically shows, right, that Sheldon Adelson was the one calling the shots on behalf of John Bolton, and probably in the case of Trump right now as well, since we're seeing that Bolton's policies and Trump policies are pretty much super aligned as of, well, since forever, but especially now. And then there was this image over here, which is from Ehud Barak, who says, I mean, this is just like a small snippet of this exchange between Ehud Barak and Jeffrey Epstein. But basically, the context for this discussion is that I believe they were talking about investments in Israeli cybersecurity companies or Israeli surveillance companies. This is on 2013. This is in 2013, 1st of January, when Ehud Barak was still Minister of Defense. And they were like on and off on a call. And then it seems like Ehud Barak might be losing patience or something along this kind. And he says, can you call home? I think he's putting up a phone number there. Can you talk? That's like 45 minutes later. He says, can you talk? Or should we continue tomorrow? Then he signs EB, which is the way Ehud Barak signs his messages. And then he says, are you okay? Or should I order a rescue mission to the island? I don't have the ability to call for rescue missions. And generally, it should be countries, heads of states, that are able to call for rescue missions. And in this case, this is Ehud Barak, the Minister of Defense, calling for a rescue mission. And if you're doing this, it's usually for nationals of your own country or for operatives working on behalf of your country. And in this case, I think this is a strong evidence showing that Jeffrey Epstein is tied very closely to Ehud Barak and probably taking orders from him or something along those lines, specifically because he's talking about a rescue mission.
One thing I just mentioned, Rami, is Barak might have been joking, half joking. Maybe he thought that this would give Epstein a chuckle, but at the end of the day, the fact that he's even joking in that manner, I think, shows the degree to which he had a very, very close relationship with Epstein. And at this point in time, was he still the defense minister of Israel? You may have already mentioned this.
Yes, I believe he was still defense minister of Israel.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at the sensitivity of this of the relations between Jeffrey Epstein and Israelis, you know, defense industry, it really makes you wonder where would such a joke come from, right? There's always a bit of truth in these jokes. And then here in this message between Jeffrey Epstein and Anil Ambani, I believe Anil Ambani is from the Reliance company in in India. These like big heavy industries, pretty much like oligarchs of India. I think Anil Ambani is one of the son of the owner. I might be mistaken. But he says, Jeffrey Epstein tells Anil Ambani, September, UN Assembly brings many people to my house. You should try to attend, all off the record and fun. Makes you wonder what kind of people it brings. You could assume it's probably diplomats, UN ambassadors, heads of states. And we know that there was no such thing as off the record in Epstein's properties, because they were all bugged with cameras, whether it is the island, his New Mexico compound, his apartment in Paris, his apartment in New York. And it really makes you wonder, how is Jeffrey Epstein able to bring all these people to his homes? And what's I mean, in the West, in Western media, Jeffrey Epstein is portrayed as some socialite who's just connecting, who's building this honeypot scheme, or taking advantage of women. But why is Jeffrey Epstein super interested in specifically the UN Assembly in this specific case? And it seems like when you read this message, it doesn't seem like this is the first UN Assembly where he brings people to his house. It looks like it's something very common that happens quite often. And then there's this screenshot as well that I had found, which this is in the context of some interrogation, or sorry, some panel that is being kind of investigated by the U.S. government, and basically this is I believe with like some representative of a university or some institute, and the person in that institute seems to say that he's not able to get the woman to talk. There's a lot of question marks. I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm going to dive deeper into this specific document. But what's particularly shocking is when he says the institute scientists definitely they'll be able to testify. The girls can be forced to testify on video. I'll explain face to face if they need encouragement. Who is Jeffrey Epstein to be able to force someone to testify? Who are the girls? And why does he need to explain face to face? Why can't they be written in emails? Right? So really makes you want to dive deeper into what kind of tactics is Jeffrey Epstein able to implement in order to extract some testimony from these girls. And then this is something that I saw on Twitter. I cannot fact check it on my own, but it's probably worth taking a look at. It's an article from The Ditch that says that Jeffrey Epstein's FedEx account was still active after his supposed death. And I believe there was some shipments taking out from Israel. So this is still adding a lot more confusion and a lot more questions about what's truly happened to Jeffrey Epstein, where he might be. There was also these pictures of Ghislaine Maxwell that doesn't seem too legitimate, whether it was actually her that was being shown on these images of her being in prison. There was some quite suspicious differences between how her eyes were shown compared to the legitimate pictures of Ghislaine Maxwell that we could recognize her from. And then there's this document that I had found. I'm not sure if you're able to read, but basically it's from Robert Trivers. And he says, another thing I like about you, but do not understand, we have not had a talk on this yet, is that you are polymorphic perverse. Whereas your political associates are concerned, if we take you to reflect those with you, you are a radical socialist, as you sit with Fidel Castro, who asked your friend, how can I be of assistance? You are a radical Islamist as Ahmadinejad visits you in New York after fulminating against Israel, Zionists, and perhaps Jews as a category at the UN. By the way, I Googled him and he just learned that he was an engineer and teacher of poor background, something you probably knew. So did you connect on his level? I thought to myself, yes, we all like to see our money grow. Fuck ideology. On reflection, I do think I might have some way you might help with my life, whatever. And then Jeffrey Epstein responds by saying, I'm polymorphic in all areas of thought except sexual preference. I see no permanent team affiliations that work in the long run. Surfing waves does not mean going down with the current one. He responds by nice. And well, we know that his political ideology is fully aligned with Zionism, with Israel. And that might show that this is Israel's strategy when it comes to diplomacy. It means flirting with the United States, with the Saudis, with the Qataris, with the Emiratis. Jeffrey Epstein has tried to build this network in Cuba through Daniel Seiad. I'm not sure I don't think it worked at all. And then there were some claims. I think there was this Dimitri. I think you were the one who spoke about this, about Jeffrey Epstein's petty attempt at connecting with Putin, which didn't seem to work. So I mean, this message. I believe this is Robert Trivers, in some way acknowledging Jeffrey's fluidity, which should tie him to Mossad, but I don't think Robert was able to connect the remaining dots. Mm-hmm. Were you going to say something, Dimitri?
Yeah, we covered the claim that Epstein was an agent of the Kremlin in an interview with John Helmer a couple of days ago, and what the evidence shows is that Epstein had some clumsy interactions with oligarchs. As John pointed out, they didn't need any tax advice or any money laundering advice from Jeffrey Epstein because they had mastered those dark arts long before Epstein did. And in fact, there's no evidence at all that Epstein ever met with a senior official within the Russian government, let alone with Vladimir Putin. And all the indications are that Epstein was trying to establish connections with the Russian government at certain points, but for reasons related to Israel, because Israel wanted him to do that. You know, there was one, I watched yesterday an episode of, I think it was Breaking Points, where Sagar Enjeti was saying that he was talking about some documentation from the Epstein files, which shows that that Epstein had arranged for a deal with the head of the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, who apparently had at one point been trained by Russian intelligence. And the deal was that Epstein would get great speakers for the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, big, powerful men to come and speak at it, you know, at a time when Russia was under sanctions, if this guy would help Epstein gather some intelligence about some Russian woman who apparently was a lady of the night and who was causing problems for Epstein. And Enjeti seemed to interpret this as evidence that Epstein was somehow involved with Russian intelligence. But if Epstein was an agent of the Russian government, he would have just taken orders from the Russian government. He wouldn't have demanded something in return for his services. So if the Russian government said, hey, you know, we want you to line up some great speakers for us at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, you know, to help us rehabilitate our reputation in the world, you know, an agent of the government would have done what they were told. But he was saying, look, I'll help you if you do this for me. So did he have interactions with some people in the Russian elite? Yes, he did. But there's really no credible evidence that he was an agent of the Kremlin. There is a mountain of evidence that he was an agent of Israel and of the CIA. And, you know, the reason I think it should be obvious to everybody who's listening to our conversation today, the reason why all of a sudden in the last few weeks, the corporate media in the West have been trumpeting these alleged connections between Epstein and the Russian elite is because they want to bury the story about Israel's connections to Epstein. But don't be taken in. I'm sure most audience members understand perfectly well what's going on here.
And then in this email over here between Adam Blee, who's like a Canadian businessman a bit, he says to Jeffrey Epstein, what about if you just invested in Innovative Media? This is the Raymond family. I think they're the ones who own Indigo, if I'm not mistaken. Close with Bronfman, another Montreal-based family that has a presence in New York. And Innovium used the proceeds to invest in Seed. Innovium now only owns its shares in Seed. This is how Francesca von Habsburg made her $1 million investment. This way, you and Francesca would also influence Innovium, biggest Seed shareholder. And Neil has talked about ultimately using Innovium to take Seed public on TSX. If we ever thought that made sense, this could be done very efficiently because of Francesca. There's a lot of documents in the Epstein files tying Jeffrey Epstein to bringing companies public, and I truly think that when your company's not public, there's a lot more leniency in kind of set up their entire structure for insider trading, and massively profit when going public. And I think these types of emails, whenever we're talking about companies going public, I think this shows kind of the way Jeffrey Epstein made his millions of dollars. Because I don't think Mossad or Israel would be want to leave paper trails behind of how connecting them through financial ties to Epstein. So instead, Epstein's money comes from through these very shady investment schemes. And then finally, there's this document that I've showed in my Daniel Seiad document, which is basically a list of like 67 names or 85 names. And basically the 88 pages are supposed, I was able to get more clarity on this document. Basically, it's a name of people the FBI was investigating. The names in red are people that we do not have a photo of. But one of the names in there that pops up is Peter Listerman, who's a Russian citizen. And Peter Listerman, his name doesn't really appear in the Epstein files. There's not many articles or documents at all that tie Jeffrey Epstein to Peter Listerman. But the FBI in another document mentioned that he was a recruiter and a matchmaker for Jeffrey Epstein. And matchmaker, when you look deeper into into Peter Listerman, the matchmaker is basically him taking Russian and Ukrainian women and connecting them to billionaires in the United States. But the question is, how was the FBI able to tie Peter Listerman to Jeffrey Epstein if I don't see anything in the documents? And that probably means that Peter Listerman is an important figure in the remaining documents that are left to investigate, or that the FBI was not able to gather information from Peter Listerman and that Jeffrey Epstein, either because they were not communicating by email, maybe through Telegram, which is what is mainly used in the Russian-speaking world. But I will be looking deeply into Peter Listerman, into how he made his billions of dollars, and how was he trafficking women on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein. So this is, I believe, after Daniel Seiad, I believe Peter Listerman is probably the most important to investigate. Then there's Ariane de Rothschild, Sultan Ben Sulayem, and of course Ehud Barak and this Adam Blee guy. Those are the main people that I'll be investigating.
Thank you, Rami. So shall I turn to finally the notable images from my review of the Epstein Island photographs?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to share with you just a few of those photographs briefly, the ones that I think are most notable. By way of background, I have now reviewed the FBI's approximately 3,200 photographs of Epstein's New York mansion and Epstein Island. I've already done a report on the photographs of the New York mansion, and this time I'm going to focus exclusively on Epstein Island. This island is colloquially known as Epstein Island, but its real name is Little St. James, and it's situated in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It consists of about 78 acres. All of that apparently belonged to Epstein, who owned the island for more than 20 years, from 1998 to the time of his death in 2019. Now, on August 12th, 2019, 5 weeks after the FBI arrested Epstein in July of that year, FBI investigators searched Epstein Island and took about 1,700 photographs of every building on the island, as far as I can tell. And as a lawyer, I must tell you, I'm troubled by the amount of time that elapsed between the arrest of Epstein in July and the searching of these premises in August. It's about 5 weeks went by. And the reason why I'm troubled by that is because it was known around the world almost instantaneously that Epstein had been arrested by the FBI, at which point it's entirely possible that co-conspirators, friends, others who were potentially incriminated by evidence that was situated at Epstein Island would have descended upon the island for the purpose of taking that evidence away and sanitizing to the best of their ability the island. I think the appropriate investigative approach would have been to arrange to have the island searched immediately upon the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein. So to eliminate or at least minimize altogether any opportunities on the part of co-conspirators or allies of Epstein to remove incriminating evidence from the island. But for reasons that have been explained, the FBI took about 5 weeks to actually search and take photographs at the piece of property at which the worst Epstein crimes were believed to have been committed, and to which many of his wealthy patrons and associates partied over the years. So the other thing I want to note about these photographs is that there are gaps in them. Each one has sequentially numbered index number, and sometimes they jump from like 64 to 68 or 73 to 76. And there's no explanation given on the DOJ's website for why these gaps exist. So, the one possibility is that they just took down photographs in this index of photographs, which they didn't want the public to see. Why they couldn't deal with any legitimate concerns around those photographs by means of redaction is unclear. But it does appear, based upon the gaps in the sequencing, that some photographs have been removed from the database that has been published. So here are what I regard as some of the more notable photographs that I viewed in my review of the Epstein Island database. This is a photograph that was sitting on a credenza in Epstein Island. And you'll see this is Epstein on a plane. I think this is quite clearly a victim because her face has been redacted. And if you compare the size of this female's head to the size of Epstein's head, there's really no question here that this is a child. And how old, I can't say, but this is not, I think it's quite clear by the size of this female that this is not a 17-year-old or near adult. We're talking here about somebody who's much younger than that. There's another photo of this. It appears to be of the same female because it's on the plane. You can see Epstein wearing the same attire, and it's very clear from that photograph that this is a small child who couldn't be more than 11 or 12 years old. Then there's this very bizarre and troubling photograph which they found at Epstein Island, and you'll see here that this is a sink. Maybe it's a small bathtub, I don't know. But this is, it looks to me like a sink, and they've redacted something in the sink. And they're supposed to be redacting only victims. So I just don't know what to make of this. And the one possibility that occurred to me, because who could fit into a sink? A baby. A baby could fit into a sink. But what other victim could possibly fit into that sink? I don't know. But this is very, very troubling and suggests that, at least raises the possibility that one of the victims who was photographed and whose photograph they found at Epstein Island was an infant. Now, some of you may have seen at Epstein Island, there was this bizarre dentistry office that certainly does look like dentistry equipment, and you can see all around the masks of men. I don't know what to make of this thing. Why was there a dentistry chair and dentistry equipment at Epstein Island? Maybe he had his own personal dentist, but why were all these bizarre facial masks on the wall? I saw a post yesterday on X about this. I don't know whether to attach any importance to this. I think this could be just sheer speculation, but somebody was postulating that the reason they asserted, they didn't postulate, they asserted, I don't know what the source of this belief is, that they were removing the teeth from children so that they couldn't bite. Now that could just be a complete wild guess by somebody, but in any event, I really don't know what to make of this this facility at Epstein Island. And then there's this photo. Unfortunately, it's a little bit blurry, which they found at Epstein Island. And this looks like Jeffrey Epstein in the press room at the White House. And they've redacted the image of somebody who appears to be, just based on the dimensions of the redaction, as tall as Jeffrey Epstein, if not a little bit taller. And one wonders if that is a senior White House official who's standing beside Epstein, not a victim, and whose face is being obscured because they don't want you to know which White House let Epstein into the White House press room. And then the cops took a photograph of this. This was amongst the wardrobe of Jeffrey Epstein at Epstein Island. As you can see, an Israeli Defense Forces sweatshirt. What I find interesting is the cops thought it was worthwhile to take a photo of this particular piece of attire. There are lots of other pieces of clothing at Epstein Island which they didn't, pull out and take a photograph of, but for some reason the cops thought that it was important that they grab a photo of this particular piece of attire. Now, I could show you plenty of photographs of the layout of Epstein Island. It's huge. There are buildings all over the place. The man seems to have had his own construction company. For example, there were numerous sort of warehouse facilities where there were pieces of large construction equipment, all kinds of bedrooms, bathhouses, gazebos all over the place. But this particular structure caught my eye. It's quite bizarre. You can see it's sitting up on an elevation overlooking the sea. It looks almost like a little temple. And when you go inside, when the FBI photographers went inside, this is what they saw. Sorry, that's not the right one. This is the one. And if you can see what the hell that is, I don't know. I mean, that's not just a bookshelf. It looks almost like some sort of ceremonial thing. And up on the ceiling, someone had painted an elaborate mural, which included some young naked children. They weren't engaged in any kind of sexual activity, but they were young naked cherubs and horses and satyrs from Greek mythology, half horse, half men, who were, celebrated in ancient Greece for their virility. What this thing was used for, I have no idea. Could it have been some kind of occult ceremony? Possibly, but
there's Dan Cohen is working on a documentary about the third Solomon Temple, the third temple that they were trying to rebuild on top of Al-Aqsa Mosque. And when we look at this drawing over here, it looks awfully similar to the drawings that Dan Cohen shows in his documentary.
Wow, thanks for that. I didn't know that. So moving on, the cops, the FBI, when they searched Epstein Island, they found this. For some reason, Epstein had a closet which had, I don't know, 5 or 6 or more shirts from the New York Police Department. What the hell were those doing there? I just no idea. Okay, I could kind of understand one, but why were there so many of them? Were there like retired cops or active duty cops who occasionally went down to Epstein Island to, act as private security? Your guess is as good as mine, but that is odd. And then there's this really bizarre finding as well. You can't see it here, but on the left hand, so you'll see handwriting. Apparently, this is Epstein's handwriting. And on the left side, when I saw this photo, I couldn't make sense of it. It looked like some words in a foreign language had been transliterated into English. So I did some research and I found this article, and this article reports that according to a Russian speaker who examined the page on the left, what that wording is a transliteration of the lyrics of a Russian lullaby. And I'm mispronouncing it, Bahushki Bahu, which translates as "Rockabye baby, don't lie so near the edge." And the Russian speaker, a gentleman by the name of Feldman, said that given the allegations against Epstein, the image could be of a lullaby that Epstein used to calm a frightened Russian-speaking victim. And it is known that a number of the women whom Epstein trafficked and abused appear to have been of Russian origin. And finally, there's this image. It may be a little bit hard for you to make out, but if you look at the original photograph and you enlarge it, what this is it's like a boathouse or something near the sea on Epstein Island. And what is at the bottom of this thing, this is a door that opens up. It's in the floor of this structure. And you open it up and it goes down into the sea. And you'll see on the right-hand side, the lower right-hand corner, those are metal steps to take you down to the water. So it appears that there was a way of entering the facility, Epstein Island, that would offer concealment to people who were disembarking from a boat, from a pleasure craft, and entering into the facility. Or it could also have been used to remove things from the property. For example, and I'm just speculating here, the corpses of people who died or were killed there in a way that was very discreet. Who knows? Again, we can only speculate at this stage about what this particular door was used for. So those were some of the more notable images. I just want to say in conclusion that there were dozens and dozens of photographs of victims at Epstein Island. I could spend 2 hours taking you through them. But I want you to know that I've only shown you a tiny sample of what I found. Anybody who visited that island, and this is the same conclusion I came to when I reviewed the 1,500 photographs the FBI took at the New York mansion, anybody who walked freely around that island could not have missed the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was basically flaunting his obsession for very young women and female minors all over that island. So people who went there repeatedly and who claim ignorance about what Jeffrey Epstein was up to they're basically lying, in my opinion. So that's it, folks. We have a little bit of time for Q&A, and encourage you, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat. Rami, you have anything we can begin with now? You're muted, Rami.
In one of the photos you had shared in your video documenting the house of Jeffrey Epstein, there was a picture with, I think it was Monica Lewinsky.
It was a picture of Bill Clinton wearing what is reputed to be Monica Lewinsky's dress.
But do you feel like this is like a trophy a bit, right? Like celebrating an achievement? Could it be, do you feel like there's any ties between Monica Lewinsky and Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I can't prove that, but it wouldn't at all surprise me if Monica Lewinsky and Jeffrey Epstein were part of a Mossad orchestrated plan to blackmail Bill Clinton.
I mean, if I was to buy a house, the first thing I would put would not be a picture of Bill Clinton dressed as Monica Lewinsky, right? So it makes you wonder how
you're saying that painting might have been a trophy.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, it would be like a way to celebrate you're taking down of Bill Clinton in some way.
Yep.